How's it going, y'all? Aiden Anderson here with Moscow Report. As you might be aware, our Mayor Art Bettge will be finishing out his time with the city at the start of the new year, and our new mayor, Hailey Lewis, will be taking over from there. I recently sat down to talk to Bettge, looking back on his many years with the city, as well as to hear his thoughts on the future of Moscow. We filmed this on the morning of December 17th, when the town was still reeling from the overnight windstorm and the power wasn't fully on yet, so my apologies for the resulting footage quality. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Art, how are you doing today?
Oh, so far so good. A blustery evening last night. Like Winnie the Pooh might have said, the winds came whistling through and it pretty much shut down the city.
Indeed,
but
indeed.
Thanks to you, Aiden, we sit here and persevere and do this chit-chat anyway.
Exactly. And I wanted to take the opportunity just because you have been involved in the city for a good many years. And it strikes me with you ending your term as mayor as a good time to look over the past few years of city leadership, kind of look back on how things have gone, what your takeaways are from the experience, and then also what things look like for the future of our city. And I mostly want to start with, obviously people might know you as mayor, but they might not know you. So who is Art Bettge?
Reprobate, according to some. No, I've been, for the day job, a cereal biochemist, not the cereal biochemist that way, but cereals as in grains. So mostly with wheat, and worked for the USDA for 32 years, director of research at the Western Wheat Quality Lab, developing new varieties and discerning what makes wheat tick and what the genetics are that underpin that to give that information to wheat breeders for new stuff. Anyway, so essentially just flat out heavy duty bench science for all those years. I like to go out and lark about in the summer with rafting, skiing in winter, getting out and about. It's enjoyable, yeah. And of late, doing a little bit of cruise taking, which is wallowing in indulgence. I love it. So do all those things. I have a little cabin up in northwest Montana to which I escape as frequently as possible, partly because it's so far out of town and off grid, nobody knows where you are. It's great. Yeah.
When you're in the public eye, privacy becomes a luxury on that front.
Oh, it does. Had so many times in Rosars, immediately after picking up a half-gallon of ice cream, I don't know why this is, but people come up, I have a quick question, this will only take a minute. Meantime, 20 minutes later, my ice cream has turned to soup.
It's like, well, this is lovely and all. I'm glad to be of service to the community, but this is not of service to the ice cream.
No.
So I assume with your work in biochemistry with wheat and all that, was that a career you were doing prior to being involved in city politics?
Oh yeah, long since. So I started that one in 1980. Before that, I rode around in the Pacific Ocean on commercial tuna boats on 4-month-long trips, watching to make sure the fishermen were not slaughtering flipper unnecessarily. And prior to that, I was 2 years in Peace Corps in the desert, in a little mud hut in the Sahara Desert in Niger.
Oh, man.
So quite a mixed career.
Yeah. So how does a man with such a storied life end up getting involved in the city politics of a town like Moscow?
Originally, it was starting off with Planning and Zoning Commission. I looked around and city was slowly but surely developing. I was not necessarily unkeen on the way things were going, but I wanted to weigh in a little more and get a little more involved, partly because I was curious. Best way to sate one's curiosity is to get involved. So I did. So suddenly, in my decade on planning and zoning, I was chairman for 7 of those years. And the next logical step seemed to be, oh, well, you really want to move up, go to city council. So I then proceeded to have 2 terms on city council, 8 years worth. And what's the next step after that? Oh, you move to mayor. And so 4 years is that. But it started off as just curiosity. And then finally, especially with the run for mayor, I was at the point where I didn't trust anybody else to do it right. In other words, the way I myself would do it. So
interesting. So you spend well over 15 years with the city in various capacities.
22.
22 total. Wow.
It's a career.
I believe it. I believe it. It strikes me in what you're saying that eventually you become familiar enough with the systems that are in play to have a sense of, well, if you want something done right, you need to do it yourself. And the reason it has to be myself is because I understand these systems, I've been around it, as opposed to what can happen during campaign seasons where somebody who doesn't really know anything about anything comes in and says, I'm going to change everything.
Yep.
And then...
Well, first flaw with that is the fact that government of all kinds, I don't care what level it is, government moves at the pace of continental drift. It's slow. You can't do 90-degree turns with a city or any other form of government. And so after a while, with the years under the belt, I understood pretty well about where the buttons and levers are. How do you make things work? What's the responsibility of individual elected officials? What's the responsibility of staff? How does that fit in with state and federal government aspects, grant writing, grant receipts? How are those best applied? So there's a lot of technicality involved, and especially at the city level, there's not a whole lot of room for social engineering. The city is here to provide services to the citizens who are paying their money in the form of taxes and fees into the pot. And for that, they expect water, sewer, fire, police, streets, and parks. Those are the fundamental basics that the city is supposed to provide. And when you start straying very far from that, you wind up in deep waters quickly. That usually translates into litigation, and that's no good.
Yeah, I think back when we interacted, when you were running for mayor, I have this memory of you telling me that one of the first rules of being involved in city government is don't get the city sued.
Those are the famous words of Randy Fife, the former city attorney. So, when I had my first entrance into city council, he said, well, we have to have a chat. You know, come in here and sit down. We got to go over some things. And so those were the first words out of his mouth, was don't get the city sued. And the second thing he said, if things really go off the rail, you know who's going to jail. And, oh, great. This is not warming the cockles of my heart one bit.
I believe it.
So it's kind of, oh, did I just sign up for something I didn't want to? So yeah, so actually the litigation comment is partly true, but mostly it's a sign that if you do the right thing, you're not going to get sued.
Right.
People can sue for anything, so I guess it actually boils down, do you win or lose? Because you can sue anybody for anything, but whether you're going to win or not remains open for debate.
Right, and there's plenty of like pretty low level things that somebody could take issue with because they don't like XYZ element of the city. And perhaps elements of what allows you to evaluate the metric of, okay, are we going to be successful in this moment or not, has to do with, well, how closely is it linked to the services that we're expected or supposed to provide? And if we're in a position to say, yes, we can confidently say that this is a part of what we do, what our mission statement is as a city, there are better chances of that playing out in your favor. Is that a good way of framing it?
That's a good way. And also, a lot of it is involved with land use planning, zoning, code enforcement, things like that. Aspects that there might be a slight amount of interpretation of code involved, and really the code is pretty well based, and a lot of people look at it and say, well, no, not this, but you have to dig a little deeper and kind of follow a legal trail through the code and the definitions to really obtain the truth of what the intention is. So a lot of people are involved with the form over the function, and that's where disagreements arise, and that's when litigation ensues. And frequently it's just a lot of background noise and things get settled out before they ever go before a court.
Right. And I mean, that's the case with a lot of litigation just across the board. Doesn't stop people, I suppose, from making a big deal out of it if something were to just cause a stink and then word gets around or something, but it doesn't necessarily, like you were saying, form versus function. If the function of it doesn't actually impact anything, then that's all that is. And
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I guess building off of that, were there any elements, when you took on the job as mayor, were there any elements of the job when you were being introduced to it as having spent so much time at the city, that were still unexpected to you when you took on the job?
The amount of being the front-facing part of the city was terrifying. I'm not a real outward-looking guy. You know, I can be introvert, extrovert, but in this case, you have to be extrovert all the time. Be able to talk to people, be able to talk to media, Aiden, and essentially project forward the image of the city, the intent of the city, and that's asking me to judge the outlook, the tenor, the expectations of an entire population of about 30,000 people. How the heck do you do that given the diversity of people who exist within the city? And it's hard, and so trying to navigate through all that without overcommitting to any particular facet of how the city is doing is tough. And I've never been real happy with going out and explaining on behalf of all the citizens how they're feeling.
Well, I can see that also having a bit of a benefit in that it reins you in as to what you can talk about if just the idea makes you uncomfortable. And then, you know, the temptation for somebody who is of a different disposition from you might be to run their mouth about something that they're super excited about. And it's like, well, you might be very excited about it, but it's not actually representing the city super well. Whereas you being walking on eggshells a little bit also means that when you speak, you better make sure that it's correct. And
and trying to separate one's personal opinion from running the city where everybody gets the same fair shake all the time is absolutely critical. I really don't like it when people project their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own opinions on everybody. We have laws for a reason, we have policies for a reason, and that's to assure everyone that they get the same fair shake across the board.
Is that a distinction then between how the mayor and the council function? Because it seems to me that, and maybe it's just the nature of the particular councilors, but it seems like you'll see a little bit more freedom of opinion in that group as opposed to what you maybe see directly from the mayor's office.
Yeah, the councilors, all 6 of them, represented diversity of opinion on just about every issue. And it's interesting, you can never exactly ascribe any particular point of view to a counselor consistently. They bop around all over the place. But when you've got 6 people and they're all expressing their own outlook, the opinions of their constituents, you usually trend towards a nice medium, a nice consensus view of what's going on. And that's the joy of having all 6 of them up there, no matter how vociferous and excited things may get behind the podium. Generally, they coalesce around the right thing. And that's how the city should go, is trying to get cross-sectional representation and put one's own feeling aside, which is what the mayor does. And in the council, by and large, I think it's wise for them to do the same thing. I always tried to do that. But some people are more representative of certain perspectives than are others. And when you need at least 4 councilors to vote on something for it to succeed, there you go. And that's the one thing I never did do as mayor, was veto. Mayor does have veto power, but if a council has passed something with a 4-2 majority, what's the point? That overrules the mayor, so why do you bother with a veto? Unless you want to fire it back to them for further consideration. And sometimes, I've never had to do it, but it's always been in the back of my head, if you guys have really gone off the rails, I will veto it, and you guys can go back, mull it over, get a little more perspective, a little distance from perhaps an emotionally charged issue at the moment, and then come back and overrule me or not.
Yeah, I had not realized that that was something that could take place, I think in part because, at least in my memory, I don't recall that ever taking place.
Neither do I.
While you've been mayor, while previous
4 years,
mayors...
and then 8 years on council, and never happened there either.
Well, I guess that's a testament to the lack of going off the rails that has happened in the city of Moscow, or at least regards the mayors in question.
Yes, And that's always a matter of opinion too, because people in the public have every right to their own opinion. And sometimes they view what is going on with city government as completely out there. And from their particular point of view, but without understanding a lot of the metes, the bounds, the constraints under which the city operates. Idaho is a Dillon rule state, which means that the municipalities have only the power that is given to them by the legislature. If it isn't mentioned, you can't do it. So you can't rule by omission. Oh, well, the legislature didn't say we couldn't do that, so we're going to. Nope. You got to stick in what they let you do. And so that provides some real concrete barriers around the operations of the city and how we work.
I remember some time ago there was a consideration of two different ordinances where the state was taking control of regulations relative to, what was it, daycare, and then on the flip side, somewhat humorously, public nudity, and both of which you had separate regulations for, but then the state said, okay, we're gonna call out these and take ownership of them, so therefore you couldn't have your own thing anymore. You had to abide by the state, or at least that's how it was communicated during that particular meeting.
That particular issue was a point of humor because Moscow wound up with this grossly convoluted ordinance about public nudity due to a naked car wash that went on here some many years ago, and everybody was getting all excited about it, and October was coming, and I was thinking to myself, even back then, wait 2 weeks, it's going to get too cold. Nobody's going to do a car wash in this weather. Are you nuts? So instead, they went through all of this stuff, and I was just as happy to see that ordinance drop out and go away.
Just for the sake of how ludicrous and ridiculous the situation was.
Yep. And as for the daycare, I would have been happier if we could have stuck with ours because it had to do specifically, the point of conflict there was the number of caretakers per child. And Moscow required a greater number of caretakers per child ratio than the state did. And that was something that the city had arrived at in consultation with daycare providers, and it seemed to be working pretty well. So I was kind of dismayed to see that one go away.
Yeah, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I've remembered in previous years that there are ordinances in which you have to abide by the state ordinance, but you can be stricter than the state ordinance if you wish. Is that something where the ordinance has to explicitly say that the city can do this?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And that wasn't the case with these?
So things with building code, we have to adhere to the national building codes, and the state has adopted looser regs over the years than did the city. However, the interesting part of that was the regulations indicate that you don't need to have rebar in your foundation walls if they're less than 3 feet or something. Well, the local contractors thumbed their nose at that and said, we don't care what the state says, we're putting rebar in the foundations.
Right, right. So they're saying, okay, well, it doesn't matter, we want a structurally sound building, something we feel confident about building, and so they go ahead and do whatever they want at that point.
Exactly, yep. And that's exactly what happened with that one. So there's a lot of nebulousness about some of the regulations. Others are pretty concrete, and you're stuck with it. A lot of issues to do with the city centers around state revenue sharing and budgets and things like that. And recent legislation from Boise has done some very bad things to the city's ability to fully fund what needs to go on in town. House Bill 389 in particular limits the amount that can be charged for new development. So you can only charge 90% of the value to add on to the tax rolls. Well, what that means is you're foisting off the other 10% onto the existing taxpayers in town. And is that fair? I don't think so. The urban renewal areas, you can only bring them in at 80% after working on developing the things, and that's not very conducive or attractive to establishing an urban renewal area. And that's really the only economic tool the city has to lure in new development, new businesses.
Unless somehow the private businesses take it upon themselves to do the luring, which is its own kind of, well, it's a separate can of worms, I suppose. But with consequences of a bill like that, how do those concerns get communicated to the legislature, who, whether or not they intended for this to happen is a separate question, but how do those concerns get communicated?
One is the mayor and city council deal with our local legislators frequently. There's also the Association of Idaho Cities, which is a group composed of all 197 Idaho municipalities that lobbies the legislature on various legislation, laws, outlooks, policies affecting all of our towns. And actually, I'm retiring as president of that organization here simultaneously with my departure as mayor.
Somehow I never realized that you were president of
the AIC.
Which, I mean, the fact that there's an association of Idaho counties, that just, is it AIC, IAC, there's all
EIEIO.
Yeah. So,
too many acronyms.
I'm sure I've gotten it wrong at least once in one of my reports, but...
Well, who can remember all of that?
we know we're talking about the city.
The police chiefs and the city clerks and all kinds of acronyms. But anyway, the AIC lobbies the legislature, and some of the wilder imaginings of the legislators who seem to feel obliged that I'm doing my job if I file a lot of new bills to be pushed through. And if it ain't broke, why are you trying to fix something? Stop it. So the AIC tries to point out any flaws that are there, mitigate the worst impulses of the legislature. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. And it depends on the philosophical outlook of the legislature at large as to how things turn out.
Indeed.
But there's been progress over the years. It used to be that probably 2/3 of the bills that the AIC opposed passed, and the others didn't. And now the legislatures are coming to the AIC and asking questions first before they pass bills, and so the ratio is swung. So fully 2/3 of the stuff that the AIC supports gets passed, and the others don't. So it's essentially flipped the ratio.
Gotcha. Well, I suppose that makes it, that's just a reminder for everyone at the local level to remain engaged, because you have no idea what the trickle-down effect of your engagement could be. It could prove to be super beneficial for making your voice known and making your concerns known, trickles all the way up to
early
the state.
and often.
Indeed.
And so I'd encourage people locally to do that very same thing. Get involved, let city council, let the mayor, let the staff know what's on your mind. Because not infrequently, we don't necessarily know what's on your mind. We do the best we can, but we aren't 100% able to figure out everything. So if there's stuff that you feel is important, that 3-minute interval for 15 minutes at the start of every city council meeting, come up and talk to us, please. Write, if you're paralyzed in fear about standing at a podium and speaking in public, write an email, write a letter, get in touch.
Indeed. Well, not to zoom out all the way here, but I want to take a moment to look at your whole career as a mayor so far, these past 4 years. If you're sort of looking at it from 30,000 feet up, what are the high points? What are the low points from your time?
Oh, well, we've done a lot of construction, a lot of necessary infrastructure improvements. So starting with the police station, we've got a new police station. We've got a new airport terminal in conjunction with the counties, the universities, city of Pullman, and fantastic, so much better than that old thing. And I'd encourage anybody who hasn't been on a flight, go out there and fly someplace. It's really quite good. And when you factor in parking costs and the miles between here and Spokane, Pullman is probably a bit cheaper than going to other airports.
Oh yeah.
Fly PUW.
Just waiting to get more cities on that list of
so let's
flights.
See. Conveniently, sensing that this might be the question, I wrote down a few things. Let's see, we got the police station. Also, as part of that same bond, we got the Haddock building for use by the engineering department, community development.
And for anyone who doesn't know where that is, where is that relative to?
Right across Washington from the co-op.
Right.
So easily explained that way. It's the old cable TV building, yeah, from back in the early 80s.
Cable TV in the 80s.
God. Yeah, what else did we do? Oh, revamped the Mann building across the street where Infotech and Human Resources is. It was a concrete block building, and concrete block does not last forever.
Indeed.
So had to redo all that. But the highlight of that was we got a $10 million bond passed by the citizens with the supermajority, 66 2/3%, at a whopping 1.27% interest.
Oh man! Wow.
So I double dog dare you to find interest like that again.
Infrastructure, make me jealous.
Also, in the past 4 years, we put up a bridge at Mountain View and 6th. We put up a roundabout at Mountain View and 6th, which eased a lot of the congestion that occurs every single morning and evening out there, because there used to be a huge line of people all the way back to Short's funeral. On 6th Street there. It was a
2 hours later, you get to where you're going.
Exactly. Got the emergency radio project. The current radios do not penetrate into all the buildings in town. Best Western is a big gap. Other buildings around town, you can't get a radio signal in and out of. There are dead spots in town just because of the topography. So the new radio project will provide full coverage all over town. And for the $2 million to me, it is every bit worth it, because all you need is one poor firefighter stuck in a basement with the building collapsing around him, screaming for help, and nobody can hear. No, absolutely not. $2 million is more than worth that. We've extended utilities looking ahead past the intersection of New 95 and Old 95, because with the addition of New 95 coming in, there's going to be growth out there. So we sent out water and sewer out beyond that, rather than go back after the fact, chisel out the new asphalt and do it afterwards. No.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, did that. All the street paving, we've done a lot of improvements for pedestrians along Mountain View. Got another project coming up this summer to finish the job on that, which will be from Joseph Street to White Avenue in front of the fairgrounds frontage there, and also the west side of Mountain View from F Street on up to Slonaker. And those should improve and bring that wretched former county road, after 30 or 40 years, up to city standards.
Oh man.
Which is nuts. Working on wells, let's say we've put in path lights along Paradise Path to help illuminate that in evening hours. Lots of stuff. And then less visibly, reworked the floodplain map and saved a lot of the buildings down along the Troy Highway down near Veach in that area, saved them from having to buy flood insurance now, and are working with the Corps of Engineers to find a plan to dredge out poor Paradise Creek, because we get all of the soil from farmers between here and Moscow Mountain, comes in, settles out, clogs the channel, leads to flooding. So we're working with Corps of Engineers as a way to do that. Put together the climate action plan that stipulates how the city should react to the altering climate that we're seeing now. And a lot of that has to do with electrifying the fleet. And why not? Electric vehicles, you don't go far in them when you're here in the town. You might put, 25 miles a day on them, take them back to the shop, plug them in overnight, and that saves gas, oil, transmissions, all kinds of stuff. And the only thing you really have to replace are tires. And that's actually saved the city a lot of money on fuel and maintenance, all kinds of stuff. Other things, let's see, we've added 3 paramedics.
Ah, wow.
We were down to 2, and one of the paramedics was covering 50-some% of the calls.
Oh,
you
man.
cannot expect somebody to keep doing that for a long time. So in cooperation with the volunteer fire department and EMS folks, We've got 3 now, and so we've got full paramedic coverage in the city 24/7, 365 now. And that also extends to areas around us because we're the group with the paramedics. Troy doesn't have paramedics. Geary, Potlatch, Genesee, they don't have paramedics. So when you're having a serious medical crisis or an accident, I want a paramedic to show up and bail me out, please. So we got 2 of those, got 2 new fire engines, partly through grant funding, and they're $750,000 a whack.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got on order a new ladder truck in conjunction with the university, and that's $1.8 million.
And remind me again, when is that expected to?
28, I believe.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
But we ordered it already to get a cheaper price, but because each and every fire engine, I don't understand why this might be, but every fire engine is custom built by hand, starting with everything. They make the cabs and the tanks and everything out of aluminum, weld it together, and put it together individually. There is no Henry Ford assembly line for fire engines.
Does that have more to do with either potential liability or just better quality integrity checks, or?
I think it's got to do more with the fact that there's 2 fire engine manufacturers, period.
Ah, well, that'll do it.
So that's
not much you can do about that, I suppose.
Yep. And then we've got things that have also gone on, like SEL has put in a new building on the south end of town during my tenure, and there's another one coming on, another $50 million building going up down there. We got Home Depot, all kinds of good stuff.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like, as far as a term as mayor goes, it sounds like a term that's filled with a lot of projects, a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of, it seems like a healthy balance as well as solving old problems and looking forward to the future of, okay, what sorts of things are we going to anticipate? Yep. This might be a little bit of an odd question, but do you feel coming to the end of the term that you've left anything unfinished as regards?
Oh God, hordes of stuff. But a lot of it I'm trying to push on through to give it sufficient inertia that it can't be stopped. So alternate water supplies is chief among them, because we sit on a fossil aquifer, and it's going to run out one of these years, going down at 7 inches a year. How many more 7-inch increments do we have left? Nobody really knows. So anyway, working on a project, got funding from Idaho Department of Water Resources for a 10% study for pulling water from the Clearwater, slightly above the paper plant settling ponds. Thank you. Piping it up the hill and treating it, and then using some of it directly. And this part remains to be worked out because we're trying to keep it intrastate at the moment, which simplifies the water rights and funding and all kinds of other stuff. But then we'll cross the hurdle of how do we get the water to Pullman, because they're on the same aquifer. Do we pipe it across the border, which is a legal nightmare? A lot of proscriptions on that. No, you can't do it. Or do we inject it into the aquifer, because the aquifer runs toward Pullman, and subversively smuggle the water under this arbitrary line on the surface?
Gotcha. And how is Pullman, because obviously, I mean, we hear a lot about PBAC, Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee, at the city meetings in Moscow. I'm not as familiar with where Pullman sits when it comes to those sorts of decisions, because obviously they benefit from using the aquifer, but I don't know where their conversations are relative to finding an alternative supply like you guys have.
They're partners in PBAC, full partners, and fully supportive of what goes on, because they will need water too. They're in the deeper end of the aquifer bathtub than we are, so their need is less urgent, but they are still going to need it. So this also involves the congressional delegations on a federal level. So we go back and pay them visits frequently, keep them appraised of what's going on, in that sooner or later we're going to be Oliver Twist showing up with their little bowl. Please, may we have funding?
Yeah.
And it's going to be in a very expensive project that we in this area cannot afford on our own. But it's absolutely necessary. And Pullman would like to see a pipe across the border. We don't know if that's feasible. So
Just relative to the legal difficulties there.
yeah, exactly. We'd love to get it to them that way because it'd be easier and more predictable than using the aquifer as a giant reservoir. But we'll get to that part. So first part looks pretty good. Corps of Engineers is okay with the project. The fisheries people are okay with the project. We're working with the tribe, the Nez Perce tribe, on all of this too, because this is part of their heritage and their land, and we want to include them in all of these discussions as well.
Oh, that makes sense. So you've got the water thing that's sort of in progress, and I think the way you described it was give it enough inertia such that it will continue to roll down the hill with Mayor-to-be Hailey Lewis and whoever else comes after. Are there any other projects like that?
Yeah, we're trying to work our way through whatever you want to call it. Housing availability, affordable housing. I'm kind of preferring accessible housing. And what does that look like and how can you accomplish it? Because anybody who's putting up residences needs to make a profit to keep themselves in business, pay for themselves, their employees, and everything else. But on the other hand, how do you do it and still be able to provide dwelling units at a reasonable price? It's a wicked difficult conundrum. And so we're trying to continue looking at that, looking at aspects of where might we be able to get grant money to help assist with this. Should we initiate a, excuse me, a housing authority in town?
Yes, I've been seeing a little bit of that, and I know it strikes me that the conversation's somewhat on hold insofar as, well, there's about to be a big overturn with the end of the year coming up and that sort of thing. But it strikes me as you've got a mixed opinions on that, or at least the chatter appears mixed. But
would you like my opinion on that?
Sure, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I think the housing authority needs to be well equipped with a good business plan to start with. Who's going to be on the board? Who's going to be the executive director? Where is your funding coming from? How are you going to obtain sufficient funding to have a difference? And how do you intend to spend the monies? So until a business plan arrives that incorporates those aspects, it launches a housing authority that's nothing but a debating society.
Right. It's another committee for talking about doing something. I remember hearing similar thoughts from council when the idea of a housing authority was pitched by some of the Latah County commissioners way back in the day. And I think it was along very similar lines as, okay, whether or not we agree that this needs to exist, if it does end up existing, this should be the context in which it exists, not just as we should do something and then it turns into just a room of people saying we should do something and then nothing happens.
Well, it's kind of like the English bobbies, stop, or I'll say stop again. Okay, where's the progress? Show me the deliverables.
With something like housing as well, where the end product does take time anyway, simply because it takes longer than anybody would like to get houses constructed and supplies put together and regulations to be passed and all of the right pieces of paperwork to be approved.
Right. Actually, the approval process skitters along pretty quick because the city's been pretty strict about that. We want approvals, depending on the scale of the project, in 1 or 2 weeks, period.
Oh, okay.
And inspections, somebody calls in, they want an inspection, we want to do it the same day. So the city's tried to remove itself as an impediment in any way on this.
And I suppose there's just, some of it will ultimately end up being market forces where it's just like, I'm sorry, but the timber's not coming in at the rate we would like it to or at the prices that we're able to afford.
Yeah, what we really need is a very large developer to come in and, for example, do infill development in Legacy Crossing area, the URA urban renewal area between the university and the city, the downtown area. Big developer, come in, do a huge project and get it done. Because our current developers around town are not equipped for ginormous projects. They don't have enough skilled labor available to them to really indulge in a massive project like that, nor do they have the funding to support it.
And that sort of demonstrates just how interconnected all these other issues for the city are, because in order to attract a major developer like that, you can't just say, hey, major developer, hey, come here and do whatever you want. No, they need to have an incentive to know that they're going to receive a kickback for what they're doing, and that requires a profitable business environment, an attractive looking city, all of these other things that play into it, which require their own construction and regulation and that sort of thing. So there's...
And that's where the URA comes into a certain extent, because the URA can help build the roads, water, sewer, communication, electricity. They can help build all of that. And that's a huge incentive for people to come and do it. But so far, not a lot of nibbling. Everybody seems to be busy, especially down south in the Treasure Valley, building that place. And so it's a sword that cuts both ways. They've got a lot of building and growth going on down there, 14, 15% of the year. Infrastructure and city services cannot keep up. Up here, we proceed along on our very steady, somewhat staid 1% per year, which is about 300 new people per year, requiring about 125 new dwelling units per year, if you assume 2.5 people per dwelling unit. And we aren't even keeping up with that, truthfully. But on the other hand, city services and infrastructure are not being stressed to a great extent. We can accommodate that sort of growth.
That's an interesting, you get some spillover into some of the other towns as well, which are working, I would assume, to do, in their own capacity, to do development. And so Pullman shares a little bit of the road, Potlatch, Troy, some of the other places share a little bit. If they have the money, maybe they're getting their 50 acres and a mule somewhere in the city area of impact. But
yes, as long as they don't build any more county roads that we have to subsume eventually, and then like Mountain View, have to spend 30 years and a lot of money reworking.
This would be a little bit more of a contemporary question then, but I just saw at the county some major changes happening at the county level relative to city areas of impact in this county. And Moscow experienced some pretty significant changes. Do you have any thoughts as a mayor on that?
We don't really have any control over what the county designates as the area of city impact at all. We're happy that they do, but and we can talk to them about it. And, how about pushing things out another quarter of a mile or something? But that's strictly a county commissioner option. So mostly we stay out of it.
Gotcha. But it is the sort of thing where if there were opinions, you'd have a discussion about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And discussions are the approach that really make things happen. Because if you can get together and talk to people about things, your chances of succeeding for the benefit of all are much enhanced. Going in and providing a dictate, not such a great idea. Go in, talk to people, get their point of view, express your point of view, work toward a solution instead of working towards my way or the highway. It does work out.
Well, on that note a little bit, I'd like to hear from you about what you think some of the challenges were that you've faced in your time as mayor. I know there are a couple that will just immediately come to the public's mind relative to becoming mayor right after or right at the end of the pandemic, and then of course the whole situation with the tragedy over at the university.
Yeah, the tragedy has been sort of the hallmark of the entire 4 years. It has loomed around. I was hoping for a quiet 4 years, made it 11 months and 13 days. And then boom, things busted loose. And that was when I found out that dealing with media is a horrible thing generally. I will say that local media, the Moscow, Pullman, Lewiston, folks like you, even as far as Spokane, all decent, interested in getting the story, getting the information, and providing what the public wanted to hear. Well, not what they wanted to hear, but what they could hear. But once you get outside of the area, national and international media suck. They are slash and burn jackals. And I hated every minute of it. So I've been on a couple of documentaries just because as the front-facing part of Moscow, you need to give these interviews out and say what you can. and it was very painful. So you can find me out all over the place. My sister in Tennessee, oh, I saw you on Good Morning America. And, geez.
Yeah, it's nothing I'm proud of. It's nothing I'm interested in.
No, and a graduate student from New Zealand, oh, Art, I saw you on the telly this morning. I'm going, oh, crap, I've made it to New Zealand. You've got to be kidding. But anyway, that just kept on giving and giving, and it was excruciating, frankly. The emails that flowed in from people who were, their own conspiracy theorists and online detectives and things like that, horrible. And they criticized the police department, they criticized the city administration unnecessarily on everything. And there was an interesting difference that went on from the 13th of November until the 30th of December. It was all, you're Mayberry, you guys are a bunch of Barney Fifes out there trying to solve a very complex case. December 30th happened, the arrest was made. Boom, brilliant police work. God, you guys did the best thing ever. And so I'm thinking, man, you people are just like wind vanes or something. It was horrible. And still it continues. There's still people out there who are still wanting interviews and things. And okay, I'll talk, but I don't have a lot to say about it. So, fine.
It's the case of, it's one of those things where just the nature of the circumstances was going to dictate that something like this was going to happen. What is interesting to see, though, is the way in which the local community has such a starkly different approach to the whole conversation than a lot of what the story has become in other places. And for the people for whom it's still a relevant part of their lives, ironically, it seems like they're the ones that are moving forward the most and seem to be like, okay, let's go on to the next thing.
Well,
whereas
Moscow's kind of an example of degrees of separation, because everybody in this town had maybe a 1 degree of separation from the victim to themselves. And it hit very hard, very deeply, and very emotionally for everybody here in this town. This is not something that happens in our town, period. And I was so proud of our citizens who did not fall into the trap of, ooh, I want to get my face on the TV. Mostly it was kind of like, get away from me with your camera. We're having an issue here, and we all feel it deeply. And you guys coming in and poking at us like this is objectionable in the extreme. So I was so proud. Some of the businesses downtown, when the cameras came marching in, shoving microphones and cameras in clients' faces and things, I just said, get out. Good on them. They did really well. And I think by and large, the whole town got behind that sort of feeling, and wonderful. So citizens of Moscow, kudos to you guys. You did great. And
Indeed.
Gradually, people are getting better because we're now on year 3. We just passed year 3. And that means an entire cadre of students at the university in a 4-year degree program are moving on. So the direct connection is waning. And we should not ever forget what went on, but we don't have to dwell in it forever either.
And there is a sense as well that this is more possible now that the case is more or less concluded as not just as a legal matter, but as a spectacle, which is huge for a lot of people. And yeah, there will be some people somewhere who want to keep it as a spectacle in the same way that any major tragedy remains a spectacle to somebody long after it's taken place. But that allows a good degree of closure for the citizens of the town, and hopefully the right sorts of mentality lessons, experiential ideas to be able to move forward in the event, not that we would hope for something like this to happen again, but in the event that something like this were to happen again, a better prepared town and an understanding of where we stand when something like this comes across our way.
And so there have been a lot of lessons learned, part of which has been, okay, we're going to get people here in the city trained in crisis communication, because that was, from the city's operational point of view, the worst part of it. We were not prepared for international media descending upon us in a crisis situation. So we've had people go off to crisis communication classes, how to deal with large media, things like that. So now much more prepared than we were beforehand. And that's about the only good thing you can say about the whole business.
I was going to ask if there were any after-action report type items like that, which it's good to hear that progress is made on that.
And the rest of it is the police were, they're flawless. They went in, they saw the scene, they said that we're over our heads. This is way beyond our means, and called in immediately the State Patrol, the FBI, and that's where the real nitty-gritty, grinding, detailed police work went on, and that's why we got the conviction that we did. And that might not be satisfactory to a lot of people. We will never know why, I don't think, and that's a big gap. But that's one of those things we're just going to have to say we won't know and be all right with it. But just know that justice has been done, and frankly, given the choice, I'd prefer to be shot than stuck in prison for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is an appropriate sentence in this case, I think. You're never seeing the light of day. So my little vindictive point of view, but yeah. So that, and then of course the usual city stuff that goes on where occasionally you have to fire somebody. I hate that deeply, and that's always a problem with being mayor. The buck stops on your desk, and when something happens and you have to fire somebody, well, you got to do what you got to do, because you got to think about the rest of staff and what's going on in town by way of delivering services. So, and of course, there's the usual thoughts that go into restructuring positions for best efficiency. Currently, we're hiring a new community development director, and that'll be pretty much wrapped up by the end of the week.
Okay.
And so we need to get somebody in who will be in charge of grant writing, planning and zoning, code enforcement, engineering, and parks and rec, and the arts department, which is a rather diverse portfolio.
Seriously.
So we need to get somebody in who can really handle that, and will be an asset to the city going forward. So it's a critical position, and finding somebody for that going to be interesting.
And I've always been very impressed by what appears to be the competence, or at least the articulativeness. Is that a word?
Articulation?
Articulation?
Ability to articulate.
Something like that. Of the staff who present during these meetings and who interact with you guys, answer questions that you have about different issues. They always seem to be very on top of your game.
Oh, they
on
are.
top of their game.
We've got such a great staff, and it starts with the folks that stand behind the podium and articulate issues and answer questions, but it extends all the way down to the guys who are running lawnmowers out in the fields, the guys who are out today sawing up trees that have fallen across roads, cleaning town up. And every one of them, really great, dedicated staff. We are so lucky. The city runs on 165 staffers about. When Home Depot opened, they hired 150 people. There's your comparison.
Wow.
So think on that a little bit, and I'm amazed and very appreciative of the ability of our city staff to get things done, and done well. They're imaginative. Boy, they're imaginative. So they come up with solutions that we would never think of ourselves. And it's always behooves one in the political area to remember, you're the dabbler here. You set the policy direction, provide resources. Now get out of the way and let the people who are the experts do their job. Because that's something that's always bothered me over the years, is city councilors and or mayors who try to micromanage.
Right.
You don't know how to do these things. Let the people who know how to run a sewer plant or the water, let them do their jobs. And if you don't like it, speak to the city administrator about it, and they'll look into it. And it's probably just your own inability to appreciate what's going on that is the issue, and it's not them.
So just briefly on that, I want to talk a little bit about the specifics of the job of, tell me, what does an average day in a mayor's life look like? And then more specifically, because we see this all the time with council being a part-time position, and many of the councilors have held full-time jobs outside of their role. It doesn't strike me that the mayor is quite the same way, but tell me about a day in your life and the work-life balance elements of that.
You mean the mayhem and chaos?
If you may, if that's what it is, you know?
Not so much. No, it's extremely variable. Some days you wind up starting your day at 7 o'clock with an early breakfast meeting, and it stretches on till after 9 at night, and just nonstop stuff. So generally you've got meetings with staff Monday mornings and Wednesday mornings, and then whatever base touching you need to do with the city administrator along the way to keep things ticking. Meetings with constituents, meetings with groups who want to hear from the mayor, okay, what's going on with the city, what's happening? People who just want to get answers, things like that. You spend a lot of time going over the paperwork that's involved. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to get signed and gone over each and every week. And frankly, mayordom is eating time like Pac-Man devours dots.
Ah, okay.
It's just not. So some days you might have a half a day or occasionally even nothing much going on. Other days you're busy the whole time. So it's probably slightly more than full-time job, and way more than full-time if you count the times when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about something.
No, I get you. If it's preoccupying space in your brain, that definitely tells you a bit more about, because some people, they get to the end of the workday, they don't have to think about it anymore.
No.
But that's not the case with the mayor at all.
No, not even. So you're always worrying about that. Budget season is about ready to start again, and it takes a long time to put together a city budget to try to be as effective with the dollars you have as possible. And that takes up a huge swatch of time. It's crazy, and it involves looking at what the capital plans are, capital improvement plans. Where do you want to devote your money? What major challenge areas has City Council determined that need to be addressed? And going on with things like that. So you have to fit all of that in, and that takes time, energy, a lot of thought. If you've looked at the budget, I know you have.
All 350 pages of it, more or less?
It is a daunting document, and every line and every bit of expenditure is in there. And that's a way you can really see in detail what's going on with the city. But yeah, it takes a lot, and have to give thought to what's going on, and you'd better be able to explain it. As mayor, you got to be able to explain. And so part of that comes down to the State of the City address that goes on every year that kind of recapitulates what's gone on in the last year. Where's the city headed now? What do things look like? And if you're not looking 15 years over the horizon, you're probably not doing your job right.
Right, and that can be a tricky piece of business for somebody who, if it's their first term as mayor and they haven't been involved with the city prior, what do we do now? You've got a lot, and it makes sense that, I mean, in my experience, a lot of the previous mayors, and yourself included, have been involved with the city for some time. So that ability to project at least somewhat into the future, because, well, you've been around the city and know how things run a little bit and can say, okay, well, something's going to happen here, as opposed to coming in with much less prior experience and trying to do the exact same thing.
Right, and then there's the aspect of people coming in with lofty campaign goals that when they arrive find out that, no, the state has prescribed you from doing that. You can't do what you just wanted to do and spent your time campaigning on. And a lot of that goes on. Everybody comes in into the campaign with speeches that are great for getting elected, but you ain't ever going to be able to do them.
Well, I will have to say, I mean, you campaigned in 21, which was a great year to campaign in the sense of forgive me, my impressions of the campaign at the time was it's very easy to be the voice of reason in a campaign like this, because in other years where things are less high stakes or you have less flamboyant personalities running, everybody just basically agrees. And then it becomes really hard to say, okay, well, how do I choose who to vote for from this when...
Oh, he's got more yard signs.
Right, exactly.
And that's a terrible reason to vote for anybody. But
in your case, you ended up, there was the ability to differentiate yourself wasn't that hard, but you also didn't have to do too much as far as be flamboyant yourself.
No. Well, that's not exactly my strong point anyway. I'm not that much
Could have fooled me.
Oh, really? Oh, good. I've successfully concealed myself. But yeah, lots of promises get made, and some campaigns are more substantive than others are. Mm-hmm. And this last campaign was more, I don't know, to a certain extent, ideology on how city government should work. Mm-hmm. And where the emphasis should be put than others have been. In my campaign for mayor, I was hoping for more of a debate where I could say, no, you are barking mad with that last comment. Are you nuts? Mm-hmm. So it was interesting, and I still worried myself into anemia damn near over the whole campaign. I think anybody who's campaigning and wants to get into office worries themselves, as well it should be, because that's just the introduction to the worries that are going to be coming.
Right. It's a good testing ground, and I think the biggest challenge of a campaign is on that front is, okay, if this is just a testing ground of the things you're going to be worrying about eventually, then make sure the campaign is structured so that you worry about the right things.
Yes.
Because I've known people who, they run on an issue and then halfway through even the campaign, they realize, oops, oh, there's nothing I can do about this, but all of my messaging, all of my signs, all of my whatever, and now you kind of have to double down in a really excruciatingly humiliating way, or face undoing a bunch of it. And
or, as you point out, finding yourself extremely articulate about why you just changed your mind.
Exactly. Lots of paragraphs, confessions, etc. Which,
well, new information has come to me, so that's always a great prelude.
Mm-hmm. So it's a good way to tell that somebody just spent the last evening panicking over some situation or another.
Oh, it's unusual. But yeah, and the other aspect of local races is that it's nonpartisan. Mm-hmm. There's no R or D or I behind your name on the ballot. Mm-hmm. It should be focused just on the issues and save the partisan campaigning for upstream.
I get the sense that there is some of that continues to go on. It's like implicit in the background.
Exactly. It's exactly what goes on there. And yeah, it's you can't divorce yourself entirely from it. Mm-hmm. And you have to pay attention to it because it predicates a lot of the philosophy of government. Mm-hmm. And where things will go.
And a lot of times it's tricky because it exists, but not officially, which makes it difficult to address when it comes down to like some of the events where candidates are poised against each other, where the wonder is like, I know from having interacted with you in other places that there's no way that you're all this agreeable about this issue, but because of the nature of the campaign, we can't talk about it except in agreeable terms, and that's where it's
that's where you turn into the U.S. Senate. Well, my good friend from the other side of the aisle, which you know they mean nothing of the sort.
Good friend, worst enemy, doesn't really matter.
But yeah, eventually you find out after you're elected, you need to not necessarily get along perfectly, but at least give an ear to what people have to say, because there's a lot of stuff out there that you don't know and that other people do, and you should listen to what they've got to say carefully without automatically dismissing them.
And also, like you said, the city's ability to affect policy in a very ideological sort of way is profoundly limited, and that's by design, given the nature of the services that you need to provide and what your role as a city is in taking care of and shaping this community. And that's where people can just be misguided from the get-go when they think, okay, city government can do X, therefore I'm going to run so I can do X. And it turns out that the city can't do X.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. So it's that mission of the city that hangs over the wall in the council chambers, where the city delivers goods, services to the people is the upshot of that mission. And that's what we do here. And when you start digressing into other issues of policy, personality, social, no.
No, yeah.
We've already got enough to do. We can't afford to do the stuff that we need to do now, much less extend ourselves out into areas that are essentially opinion and belief based. And no, just give everybody the same fair shake, the same application of law and policy as everybody else. And a lot of people would like to bring in other issues associated with that. No.
Yeah.
No. And I've tried diligently to adhere to that philosophy throughout, that anybody who lives in this town gets the same shake for everything.
So, as we come to the end of things here, I want to hear from you. What does Art Bettge have planned next?
R&R, I was thinking about running off to the cabin for a couple of weeks coming up here and sitting down with a glass of red wine, a book for pleasure instead of pain, and watching the snow come down. Other than that, there's rumors that U of I might like to catch me as an instructor for food science class.
Okay.
Maybe that.
Do you think you'll stay involved in local politics in any capacity here in Moscow? At the very least as an engaged citizen? Or
definitely engaged citizen, and certainly available to provide my perspective and my experiences to anybody who thinks they might benefit from them. So I'm sure I'll be talking with soon-to-be Mayor Hailey on issues just as I did with former Mayor Bill Lambert, with whom I'm still in contact. And he always has a certain trenchant phraseology associated with how things are working. So, so I'll be doing that. I suspect the airport might drag me back in for something. That's another aspect that I didn't mention was, as mayor, you're automatically co-chairman of the board of the airport.
Right.
And so there's that little aspect as well, which is of great interest to me. Yeah.
When it comes to, because obviously you'll be having conversations with Mayor-to-be Hailey, as well as, I would assume, with the up-and-coming city council candidates.
Lots of coffee. I could be positively jangled with how much coffee I've had discussing things with these folks.
I believe it. But when it comes to talking about it, have you gone through with them any particular challenges you see facing the city on the horizon? You know, you talk about state of the city and thinking 15 years down the road. Well, at one level, you can basically just say, well, it's your problem now, fellas. But I would think you would want to prepare them for what's coming. What do you see is coming, and what do you think, what parting words would you give to those counselors when it comes to those challenges?
Yep. One word would be patience, because you can't get it all done very quickly. The biggest challenge I see coming up that's going to have to be dealt with is the divergence between inflationary pressures, expectations of services that the citizens have, and the city's ability to provide it. Because our budget pool is shrinking. The general fund, due to court decisions, specifically Bradbury versus Lewiston, and the difference between what's a tax and what's a fee is coming home to roost. And so we've lost about 15% out of our general fund monies. And so that means streets are not anywhere near what we would like them to be. Other programs have been throttled back. City staff has been asked to do more with less. And we're past the fat, we're through the muscle, and now we're halfway through the bone. in state shared revenues, especially with the upcoming budgetary outlook, is not going to be good, and that's going to mean even fewer resources to provide the services to the citizens. And things are going to get real difficult about how do we provide what citizens expect given the resources we have. So those are going to be probably the biggest issues that the council is going to have to deal with. How do you deal with the state legislature and shared revenues, taxation, especially property tax, because that's gone completely out of control due to the divergence of how much residents pay versus how much commercial buildings pay. And used to be 50-50, now it's 78% residential, 22% commercial.
Yeah.
I was a little miffed when my house taxes went up $1,600, but the apartment complex across the street went down $22,000. And I'm wondering how much of that $22,000 went to rent reduction in the residence.
Right, right.
I'm betting it's exactly that much.
So it sounds to me like a problem of not just really, really smart budgeting decisions and understanding smart budgeting decisions, but also a question of communication and transparency, being able to communicate with the public, hey, this is the situation we're in, and that means certain things about what we're able to provide.
Yeah, that means
services.
You. And the problem with that is everybody in town has a slightly different or wildly different outlook on what they'd like to see done and what's most important to them. Well, the information is largely provided on the city's website. You just have to go look for it. We don't know what to send you to tell you because we don't know what's important to you. So to a certain extent, you got to be an involved citizen. You got to be able to go out and hunt down some of this stuff on your own. You can't rely on us to tell you everything because it's not possible. So you can lead the horse to water, etc. But communication and transparency, it's all out there. We don't have any closets into which all the clothes are locked. It's all hanging out there on the line drying. You know, come look at it, come participate, come talk to city council. But when you come to yell at city council about something, make sure you got your information in a row ahead of time. Otherwise, you just sound silly.
No, I've definitely seen that happen more than once. And you sympathize for the people there because they wouldn't have done their due diligence to come to a city meeting of all things if they weren't actually deeply interested in making sure that their point was heard.
Yep.
But, all to fall on the technicality, so to speak, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, or even, well, the issue about which you speak has been resolved 2 years ago. You just haven't noticed.
Yeah.
So things like that. What was it? Somebody was saying, oh yeah, we want to get well number 10 up and running during this last campaign. And it's kind of, that well's been Moscow's prime producer of water for the past 4 years. You're not quite on the ball with that one. So, things like that could be found out about, and a lot of it has to do with just paying attention.
Yeah.
Just, look to the stuff you report because you're up to date on everything.
I do my best.
And, the Daily News has stuff in it. And also over at KQQQ or whatever it is, he's got a lot of current stuff out there. You can find out a lot just by paying attention. And for heaven's sakes, if you're on the computer gaming, pause for a moment and go out and look at some news. Then you can go back to gaming afterwards.
Well, that very much leads into the last question I want to ask you. Aside from pay attention, stay involved, be patient, all those things, what are any parting words you would give to the citizens of Moscow from your time being mayor? Any words of wisdom, advice for the citizens for the future, or things you want to say to the community now that you're in the home stretch here?
Citizens of Moscow, well, for the most part, you are living in a great town that does great things for you. It has character. It has an art scene. It has things to do. And you will find out rapidly if you leave Moscow and go someplace else that this is a tremendous place to live. It really is good. And if you go someplace else, Moscow looks great through the rearview mirror. You go, damn, why did I ever leave? Because it's not completely big city, but you can get there from here if you want. It has a lot of big city amenities. We punch above our weight, really, on all things. And it is a great community, a safe community. Crime is low, wonderful spot. So enjoy your time here while you've got it, and pay attention, stay involved, and do your part, citizens of Moscow, to help with the feel of town, the atmosphere of town, to make it a good, safe, enjoyable place for everyone. Don't go sinking off into areas where you're unfriendly, you don't even know who your neighbor is, things like that. Get out, be social, enjoy, and pay attention to what's going on. You'll find it is a very rewarding place to be.
Indeed, indeed. Well, if I haven't said it already, thank you so much for your service to us, our community, and our city as mayor, and best of luck in the ventures to come.
Thanks. Don't be afraid to come up and say hello. Just don't melt my ice cream.
And that was my conversation with Mayor Art Bettge. We wish him a restful retirement and thank him again for being the mayor of our city. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm Aidan Anderson with Moscow Report. We'll see you next time.